Welcome back to another one of my shitty vlogs, and in today's shitty vlog, I'm going to talk about my experiences with Jetpack Compose and Google Maps. So as many of you know, I've been working on a KMM project for my production app, this BC Hydro Outages app. This app basically just shows all the power outages in my province where I live. So I wanted to make a KMM version of this because I've been wanting to make an iOS version for a long time. I was originally thinking about doing it with Flutter, but now since KMM exists, or Kotlin multi-platform, I figured why not? This is a perfect opportunity to rebuild this thing, rebuild the Android client, use Compose, use Hilt, use all the new stuff, and also build a KMM project so I can then just, pretty easily or relatively easily build an iOS app out of it. So I'm not done building the Android client yet. I've pretty much finished most of the shared business code for the KMM project, but I've been working on rebuilding this thing, the Android client with Compose, and it's been a little trickier than I anticipated because there's some things with Google Maps that I found difficult with Compose. And for those of you who haven't seen my app, let's just go and do a quick demo. I'll show you what I've done so far, and I'll show you the app in production right now. So the non-sort of Compose version. So on the screen in front of me here is two emulators, or actually one's my real device on the left here, and then on the right is an emulator. My real device is going to launch the real production version that's on the App Store right now. So if I click the icon here, the app is going to launch. You see a splash screen where it's getting the data from the API, or getting the data from Firestore actually, because I actually scraped it from the website, but that's for another video when I talk about that. For now, let's just focus on the functionality. So it's very simple. It just shows power outages in the province where I live. There's a single power company which handles all the power outages and all the power for the province. So it's, the data comes from one spot basically. So there's a couple things you can do when it first launches. I can just click on a marker. It then shows information about that outage. I could, click on this icon here and zoom into that power outage. It then shows the exact area where that occurs. And I can also do some filtering up here. So if I click on region, I can see all the sort of regions and the number of power outages in that region. So if I click on Lower Mainland Sunshine Coast, it then filters the map and shows only power outages within that region. So there you can see them all kind of down here. Here's a really big one. That's a huge area that's showing a power outage. Then you can actually filter it further by clicking on municipality, and there's different municipalities within that region. Anyway, I think you get the idea. So here's so far what I have for the KMM project. So if I click here, launch the app, again, you're going to see the splash screen, which is going to download the data. And now we see the map. Now this is not using a real device, so I'm gonna have to kind of try and use this map on an emulator, which is very difficult. So the basic functionality is here. I have my markers, they are clustering. So if I zoom out, you can see them clustering into those groups. Whoops, and as I zoom, man, I hate using this thing on the emulator. As I zoom in, those clusters will break apart. Oh, it's super laggy. I think because I'm recording video, and I have two sort of devices connected, so the map is crazy laggy, but I assure you that it's not this laggy if I just run this sort of by itself. Wow, that's super laggy. Anyway, the basic functionality is still there. I can click on these, and then gives me that bottom sheet that tells me when the restore time is approximately, kind of what the crew status is, how many customers are affected, and sort of what's going on with that power outage. So this is all I have so far. I can't zoom. I don't have that filtering done. Just this basic sort of showing the outages on the map right now. So mostly using Google Maps with Compose was mostly straightforward. I just said mostly twice because it's kind of if you're doing a simple scenario, it is pretty simple. You have to use the Android view because map view and Google Maps is not yet, I guess, compatible with Jetpack Compose yet. So you have to use the interop sort of functionality of Jetpack Compose. You have to create this Android view thing, pass the map view into the Android view, and then that gets rendered as a composable. I guess that's how it works. So that was straightforward, showing the map, showing the markers, that's no big deal. But because of the clustering that I'm doing, so when you zoom in or out, the markers will cluster into a group or uncluster depending on how far you are zooming in and out. That became a little bit tricky. So just to actually show you some code, showing you an example, here's a composable. I call it my map view container. If you scroll down here, we have to use this Android view thing because, like I said, Jetpack Compose isn't built for, maps, Google Maps. So we have to pass this map view into the Android view, which kind of, quote unquote, converts it into a composable or whatever it actually does. And then I can, initialize my map and do my stuff. So the problem with this was the sort of extras that I'm using with the map view. So the things that I have to use to manage the clustering and all that, I have to use a cluster manager, I have to use a cluster renderer. These things were not working the way, they just weren't working sort of, I guess, easily with the Google Map, because every time my composable was recomposed, those objects would get reinitialized, my clustering would basically stack on top of each other, and it was really ugly. So anyway, the solution to this was, this is gonna maybe make a couple of you make a face like, ooh, nah, not so sure about that one, Mitch, but it's okay, I assure you. What I ended up doing was I saved the Google Map. I'm gonna talk about that in a second. I saved the cluster manager, this interface, and also a cluster renderer into the view model. So because the problem really here was the life cycle. Like if I did a rotation, it wasn't only just recomposed, but because I'm using a map view and the map view is passed into the Android view, it's susceptible to the Android life cycle. So it would get destroyed, recreated. Also the cluster manager, the cluster renderer, all that stuff destroyed and recreated because the map view was destroyed, recreated. And it was showing me some strange behavior. I was getting some undesired outcome. So anyway, this is gonna make you make a little face, I think, like, ooh, not really sure, especially the Google Map thing, because I just ended up saving this all in the view model, which solves the lifecycle problem, and I prevent the reinitialization by tracking the hash code of the Google Map. So again, I'm gonna talk about this Google Map because I'm sure some of you are like, ooh, Mitch, shouldn't save a Google Map in a view model, but just kind of hang on. So in my init Google Map function, I'm checking the hash code. If the hash code of the map view is the same as the one that's currently in the view model, basically return. So that means like if the map's already been initialized, if my cluster manager's been initialized, cluster renderer has been initialized, don't do it again. I only want to do it once. That's really what this sort of check is all about. So that prevents that, and after we do that, it's all good. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Mitch, Google Map in a view model, that is not a good idea. And originally I thought that was not a good idea either, but I assure you that I have tested this. It's not leaking memory. It's not, hindering performance or anything like that. And when you really think about it, well, if you know anything about Google Maps anyway, those of you who don't know have never used Google Maps, this is not going to make any sense to you. But the way Google Maps works, well, there's a couple ways you can do it, but generally speaking, the way that I always do it, or did do it, was I would create a map view, add that map view to the fragment, and then you initialize this Google Map object by using that map view. So the map view is the view itself. The Google Map object, which is what I just pointed to and what I'm saving in the view model, is sort of like a good way to think of it is the Google Map object saves all of the information that's displayed on the map. So it's kind of like the quote unquote view model of the Google Map, sort of. Like, I know that's not completely true, but it's the thing that saves the information for the map view. So really all I'm doing here is I'm saving the object that holds all of the information for the map view inside of the view model. That's really all I'm doing, and it works beautifully. My clustering is doing what it's supposed to. I click the map, I zoom, I move around, cause a recompose, do whatever thing I want to do, and my map behaves exactly as I want it to. And one of the reasons why this was so tricky to figure out is with Compose and Google Maps, there's just not a lot of examples out there in the internet. Sort of like the main source of examples that we have available is the Android Jetpack Compose samples. They actually do have one that uses a Google Map, which is called Crane, but it's a really simple use case. All it does is actually display a map and then, put a marker on that map. So there's no clustering, there's no sort of custom behavior for the map. It's simply like, here it's going to show you, it's shows a map and then puts a marker on the map, which is relatively easy to do. It was the clustering and all that stuff that was difficult for me. And then some of you might be thinking, well, Mitch, there's other samples, and that's true. I was actually just talking to my friend John O'Reilly, John O'Reilly. Thought I said his name wrong for a second there. And we were talking about it because he saw me tweet about it, and he mentioned a sample that he has, which is called Galway Bus. And I did check this out. I actually ran this project, and I have it running on my device right now. So pay attention to the device on the left. I'm gonna actually open up his project, which I just checked out from Git, and I ran it on the phone and everything. I had to put in my Google Maps API key and add a SHA certificate, but after that, everything's good. So this will show, I guess, oh, it's actually showing my location. I want to go to the bus stops. So I'll just click one of these. There we go. So it shows, I guess, bus stops and schedules on a map. So this is great. Like this shows a good example of Google Maps, but again, it doesn't have any clustering. It doesn't have any sort of tricky behavior with the map. It's just like strictly basically showing the markers and being able to, like, you know, click on stuff and move around. By the way, John, something is broken in your app. So I'm assuming when you click on one of these things, a bottom sheet is supposed to slide up. Well, my bottom sheet, the bottom sheet is not sliding up, as you can see. So I don't know if that's maybe I'm using the app wrong or it's a bug, I don't know, but just thought I'd let you know because I think you're probably watching this video. So now that I've got the Google Map pretty much working the way that I want, I just had to add all the sort of sprinkling and the sugar on top, you know, cleaning up the material design, adding in some little animations, basically just having fun with Compose. And then also adding the filtering, like filtering on region, filtering on municipality. And then pretty much the Android client is done and I can move on to the iOS client. And there's gonna be all kinds of fun involved in that because I've never, you know, you guys know I don't have much experience with iOS. I have relatively zero experience with iOS, actually. I'm hoping that you can use Google Maps with iOS and you don't have to use like some Apple equivalents. I'm hoping I can still use Google Maps because then at least the objects and the APIs are going to be familiar to me. So chances are I'll be able to figure it out much quicker. So that'll be next week, probably. Hopefully I can finish up the Android client this week. Next week will be the iOS client. And then hopefully I can get these two apps out into production by the end of next week. So it's going to be using KMM for the Android client. I'll have all the newest stuff, Hilt, Jetpack Compose. For the iOS client, I'll have, you know, Swift UI, and then all that shared code, that shared networking, shared caching is all going to be there because it's a, you know, KMM project. And exciting stuff. I'm probably going to be on the Fragmented Podcast. Don just messaged me today and he said, hey, do you want to come and talk about KMM on the podcast? So chances are you'll see me on there in, I don't know, probably a week or two, I'm guessing. I don't know how they do their scheduling, how far ahead they do their scheduling, but I said, let me get these two things in production, then I can come and talk about KMM. So exciting stuff. If you don't watch the Fragmented, or if you don't listen to the Fragmented podcast, I suggest you do. It was, you know, pretty much the only Android podcast out there, or I guess one of the best Android podcasts out there for sure, if not the best Android podcast. It's since transitioned into more of like a, you know, just or more of a software development, like all-encompassing sort of thing recently. So if you are an engineer, you're a software developer, which all of you are, you should be watching, or you should be listening to the Fragmented Podcast. And of course, listening and watching my vlogs and watching my courses, because that is the good stuff. Speaking of memberships and courses, if you haven't gone to CodingWithMitch.com and created an account yet, what are you waiting for? Go to the website, click on login, go down here, click on register, create an account. It is completely free. After you create an account, you can watch some of the courses. You know, some of them are free, some of them are paid, like my Jetpack Compose MVVM for beginners. That's a free one. Hilt dependency injection, that's a free one. We have UI testing for beginners. That's a free one. And, you know, all kinds of stuff. I got web development stuff, how to build an API for your mobile applications. And then if you want to get into the serious stuff, the serious Android business stuff, watch the Clean Architecture course. Or another one is the Food to Fork recipe app. This is how to interact with an API that I built and use all kind of the newest stuff. Kotlin, MVVM, Jetpack Compose, database caching, a Compose only navigation system. This is probably the coolest thing about this course. There's no fragments, there's a single activity, and it's all just Jetpack Compose, view models, and you know, a custom navigation system. Very, very cool. Before you go, do not forget to leave a like. Do not forget to go down there and leave a comment. Tell me about your experiences with Jetpack Compose, or whether you're excited about these KMM videos that I'm sure to make soon. I just want to get these out into production, and then I'll probably make a KMM course. Let me know down below what you're excited about, what you've been working on, if you wish your company would adopt Jetpack Compose, anything that's on your mind, leave something down there. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.